Jewish Education in Media is pleased to present L'Chaim, a program that highlights the people, issues, and events of importance to the Jewish community. Now here is your host, Rabbi Mark Golub.
I'm Mark Golub. And are you a movie buff? Do you enjoy going to the movies? Do you look for what's coming out new? Or there's a new film in your favorite genre? Do you prefer artistic films, action movies, dramas, comedies? Are you a fan of Woody Allen, Annie Hall, Crimes and Misdemeanors? Or do you love Steven Spielberg, E.T., Close Encounters of the Third Kind, and Schindler's List? How many of these would you put on your favorite list? In the Heat of the Night, Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, The Russians Are Coming, The Russians Are Coming, Blazing Saddles, The Way We Were. Are you a classics fan? Casablanca, High Noon, Gone with the Wind, North by Northwest, The Court Jester, Grapes of Wrath. And who are your favorite film stars? Paul Newman, Sidney Poitier, Cary Grant, Humphrey Bogart, Lauren Bacall, Katharine Hepburn and Spencer Tracy, Jimmy Stewart, Henry Fonda, Barbara Stanwyck, Marlon Brando, Ingrid Bergman, Sophia Loren, Bette Davis, John Wayne, Jack Lemmon, Burt Lancaster and Kirk Douglas, Steve McQueen, Anne Bancroft, Audrey Hepburn, Peter Sellers, Elizabeth Taylor, or Meryl Streep, Jack Nicholson, Glenn Close, Robert De Niro, Michael Douglas, Al Pacino, Tom Cruise, Tom Hanks, Will Smith, Jennifer Lawrence, Sandra Bullock, Denzel Washington, Julia Roberts, Leonardo DiCaprio, George Clooney, Bradley Cooper. The list is endless. And no matter what names you put on the list, there are many, many more who somebody will tell you they should be added to any list of favorites if you're a movie buff. And that's just the kind of person we have the pleasure of sitting with on this very special movie edition of L'Chaim. It's a joy for me to introduce to you Herbert Cohen, who in addition to being a wonderful Orthodox rabbi, is a true lover of modern cinema. Herb Cohen lives in Israel, where he co-hosts with Steve Posen their own version of Siskel and Ebert, which he calls Kosher Movies, named after a book he authored that highlights 120 of the leading films of the past 30 years, showing the messages movies can convey that inspire all of us to live fuller, better lives in relationships with those around us, those we love. Herb, it is wonderful to have you sitting at this table. Thank you very, very much.
Pleasure to be here.
So you do Kosher Movies.
Yes.
You produce it in Israel.
Yes.
How long have you been doing it?
About a year or so.
Not long.
No, no.
Okay, so what spurred you to do it?
It was a long journey. For most of my career, I was a school principal. I started out as a synagogue rabbi, but then I morphed.
Where?
In Atlanta, Georgia.
Atlanta.
Then I morphed into...
And boy, you're a yeshiva boy, yeah? Yeshiva University?
Yes.
You come from New York?
Mount Vernon.
Mount Vernon, New York. Did I see Hunter?
I had a master's degree from Hunter in English,
okay.
Right.
So you know the New York area real well.
Yes.
Yeah, you're a New York kid.
Right.
Okay, Yeshiva University. Then you end up a rabbi in Atlanta?
Atlanta, Georgia.
For how long?
I was there from 70 to 97.
Oh, nice long stretch.
A long stretch.
Good. You have a good time?
I had a great time.
What's the Jewish community of Atlanta like? Not that I haven't been there, but I want to hear it from you.
Well, first I was a synagogue rabbi with Rabbi Emanuel Feldman. Then in 1976, I became principal of Yeshiva High School of Atlanta. And that was my basic career until I left in 1997.
I see. You were an educator.
Yes, yeah.
Not more than a pulpit rabbi.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Atlanta's a great city. I mean, I saw it really blossom Jewishly. It's a mecca for Jews in 2016.
Really?
Yeah, beautiful. So when I taught, when I was principal of Yeshiva High School, I taught English and language and literature. I was going for my PhD at Georgia State University. So it dovetailed with my own academic interests at the time. And I felt it was important for me to teach so I could feel at one with my faculty, but I also enjoyed connecting with kids other than simply being in the office administering.
Lovely.
So I taught English, and I found that through literature, I often could convey ethical lessons. You know, for example, in reading Tess of the D'Urbervilles, you know, by Thomas Hardy, there's a classic scene there where the two protagonists, Tess and Angel Clare, her intended husband, confess to one another about their respective indiscretions. Tess is being open. When Angel hears what Tess has been through, he totally reverses his vision of Tess. And I thought about it, and it relates really to the whole idea in Judaism that when you confess, you really have to do it not to another person, but you confess to God. You don't necessarily have to reveal all your secrets to another person. Maybe it's appropriate, maybe not. So I did this throughout my entire career of teaching. I always would find a point of contact between the literature and also some kind of ethical or Jewish lesson.
By the way, come back here for 1 second.
Yes.
There's a difference between apologizing and confessing, seeking forgiveness and confessing, yes?
Yeah.
I mean, the Jewish tradition insists that if you want forgiveness from another human being, you must go to that human being. You can't go to God.
Absolutely, right. No. But this was a question of whether you should reveal all of your past to another person. So from one perspective, Tess wanted to begin with a clean slate. So she started with a tabula rasa. On the other hand, when she told Angel Clare about her past, he had a different take on it. So that's I would say, an eternal...
So you started this with literature.
Yes.
And then what?
Then over the years, I wrote a book on it called Walking in Two Worlds, which basically dealt with the points of contact between secular and the sacred in literature. And then when I wrote this book, after I finished my career as a principal, I was in a Dallas community kollel, which was a place where you taught adults who simply wanted to come in and teach. So I had, as we all get older, I was redefining myself along the way, and I had the book basically that dealt with teachable moments in my career, where I pointed out connections between the secular and sacred, but I wrote one section of the book on film. For example, I used Chariots of Fire. And to me, that was a very, not only good film, but with a powerful message that at the end of the day, what's really important is principle, not really winning. And it was interesting in that film because the Jewish person is only interested in winning. The Christian is a pure soul. He really runs for the glory of God. So to me, that was just a beautiful film that had an important spiritual message, that what really counts in life is not the accolades that people give you, but really the good that you do. You know, as we say in Jewish tradition, you know, what accompanies us in the next world, you know, is only our good deeds.
Yes.
That's really what's important.
That's lovely. That's lovely.
So,
how do you end up in Israel?
I simply decided, all my children are here, but after being serving as a Jewish educator and then working at the kollel, I wanted to get there vertically. So I felt it was time to go because as I got older, I realized that the same vocational opportunities were different for me at this point in my life, and I wanted, in a sense, to experience the holiness of Israel, to walk on the Holy Land. And I felt that with Skype and with email, the connections could still be maintained. And I come every year in the summer to spend about a month with my children to reconnect with them. My wife and I enjoy this time to not give a virtual hug, but a real hug.
That's fabulous. You're here with your wife?
Yes, yeah.
Her name?
Meryl Cohen. She's just a wonderful artist.
Really?
Yeah. She has her own website, and she has a unique way of conveying her art. She dyes silks, and she uses it as part of her color box.
That's wonderful. Where do you live in Israel?
We live in Beit Shemesh.
And so you're there now how long?
6 years.
Okay. So you're still a newcomer.
Yeah, and I teach there too.
Where do you teach?
I teach in 2 schools. One is an elementary school, and one is a high school where I prepare kids for the matriculation exam in order to get into college. I was on sabbatical in 1997, and I was teaching at a women's college there, and I thought that I could have the same position, but that was in 1997. 20 years later, the landscape is much different, and I'm happy I found employment in which I'm able to speak English. But my students in both schools are Anglos, coming from England, U.S., Australia. So it really was a wonderful opportunity that God gave me to be able to teach in English.
That is lucky.
Yeah.
By the way, in journalistic integrity here,
Yes.
I am very good friends with your son,
Yes.
who is a wonderful Orthodox rabbi here in America. He's in Stamford, Connecticut, Dan Cohen. Yeah. And he's told me so much about you. I've been looking forward to meeting you. But I want you to know, kol hakavod, you and your wife did a fabulous job with a very special boy who is now a Gesundter rabbi. And he's writing himself, you know.
Yes, yeah.
So good for him and good for you.
Thank you.
Okay, so I understand you get to Israel.
Yes.
But now I still need to know, you're an American Jew, made Aliyah, you're teaching in Israel.
Yes.
And at some point, you want to devote a good deal of your time to movies. How does that happen?
Well, for 2 reasons. Number one, I've been a movie goer and movie fan since my early childhood. And
the movies I mentioned, you know them all, don't you?
I know them all.
Are any of them on your list, your favorite list?
A few here and there.
Yeah. By the way, everybody has their own favorite list.
Right.
Of course. Right.
But I also felt teaching is labor intensive, and I have to be always on to teach. It's not simple. And again, it's a function of my getting older. While I enjoy teaching and I find it really exhilarating, when I'm finished teaching, I'm very tired. So I feel I wanted to develop, a second career, as it were, another income stream if I could. And I had to choose something I like. And I like movies. I really feel we live in a world in which the majority of them are not very positive, even perhaps corrupting, but overall, movies can be a wonderful way to just unwind, and also they can be something that you can learn from. I remember as a child, my mother would, bless her, would also take me to the movies. I saw many films.
Where did you go?
And a perfect day for me would be to go to synagogue in the morning, where I'd go to junior congregation, and in the afternoon we go to a movie, a double feature.
I love it. I love it. On Grabban Avenue?
You're right.
Great. I love it.
The Archaea.
Right. And?
So then I went, and as I got older, I began to get more religious. There was a rabbi in Mount Vernon who really took me under his wing.
Who's that?
Rabbi Solomon Freilich. So I got sort of, I was thinking beyond, the everyday. He encouraged my parents, blessed memory, to send me to a religious camp. And I was sort of born again as a 12-year-old, driving my mother crazy with my stringencies, because there was no intellectual basis for it all. I just was like enamored with this whole new thing. So, but as I got older and I began to think more, I realized that, movies are changing and I'm changing. It's not so simple to see a movie and walk away, especially in the 60s, when movies are really beginning to change. Do
you remember some of the movies you saw in the 60s?
Yeah.
Name a few.
Butch Cassidy.
Yeah.
Bonnie and Clyde.
Yeah. Remember The Graduate?
Yeah, Graduate.
Yeah. These were important movies.
Yeah, very important movies, but complicated movies.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. So a film that really sort of made a difference in the way I perceive movies was The Defiant Ones, with Tony Curtis and Sidney Poitier.
Oh wow!
Because all of a sudden I realized that movies were not just entertainments, they actually could educate. They had an important message. And that was the first film I saw, in a sense, that had a message, but was really a joy to watch. If you could remember, it's a story of 2 convicts on a train. The train crashes, and these 2 convicts, want to get away, but there's one little problem. One is black, one is white, and they're chained to one another. And there's a classic scene in that film where they're trying to get out of a mud pit on a rainy day. And they can't get out of that mud pit unless they learn to cooperate with one another. So for me, that was just just a powerful message. Mount Vernon itself was going through a difficult time because they wanted to merge two high schools, one primarily white for college-bound students and one primarily black for kids who wanted vocations, but the primary color of the skin in that school was black. And they wanted to have one community, Mount Vernon High School. So I was in the midst of that civil rights, community discussion. And this film, I didn't feel I was a prejudiced guy in the first place, but the film made a lot of sense to me in terms of, looking at the whole issue of civil rights.
Movies can influence thinking, can't they?
Yeah, right.
And I have sometimes felt that the modern prophet is the very good movie maker. Does that make any sense to you?
Yeah.
There's a way to convey a message to the viewer, and that's what you're talking about to the audience, that changes you. You walk out of a movie different sometimes than you walk in.
Right.
And that's not true for every movie, and sometimes it's very subtle.
Yeah.
It's not that you don't have to be hit over the head, but sometimes you feel such empathy for the people on screen that you take that empathy with you when you walk out of the movie theater, and it changes your attitudes, and it can change behavior. And I think that you're 100% right, and I think movies are a very, very powerful medium of communication and of learning, as you say.
Yeah.
So here you are, you love movies, you want to create, again, a sort of a second profession for yourself, and you and Steve Posen somehow get together. Who is Steve?
Steve, actually, when I met him, he was owning a restaurant in Beit Shemesh. But when I got to know him, and he lives in my neighborhood, I saw that he really is not a restaurant person. He's a person who has connections to LA. He was an actor for some time. He was in a few films he told me about, and it was called Light Sleeper with William Dafoe. He had a part in that film. And he actually is a film producer. And then, so he was a good friend, but then I learned that he became the program director of this cable network station in Israel, and then I pitched him this idea of a Siskel and Ebert, but on Kosher Movies, and he was interested. So we did some programs, and then he had other opportunities, so he went to another vocation.
Are you still prepared to do the show?
Yeah. We did about 26 5-minute pieces because we felt it was important to be able to show something in our desire to create a larger platform and perhaps some income stream down the road. I also combined there 4 or 5 together in case there was an opportunity for a half-hour show. So on the server, as it were, I have 26 separate entities and also 6 groups of films.
Can we show a moment of your program now?
Sure.
Okay. I want to show you a little bit of Kosher Movies in which the movie being discussed is The Martian. Tell us about The Martian before we see this clip.
Yeah. The Martian was one of those rare films that I would say anybody could see. And I felt it was really done well. Ridley Scott is a master director. He really knows what he's doing most of the time. and
Matt Damon.
Matt Damon is, to me, he and Kevin Costner are the Gary Coopers of the modern age.
Very good.
These guys always look honest and sincere,
yes.
Even when they're bad guys. And when you look at them, they just exude integrity. And Matt Damon in particular, because he's not, handsome in a classic sense, but you really connect with them. I mean, the Bourne movies are one example.
Do you love
of
them?
Oh, I think they're
a new Bourne movie's coming out as you and I are sitting here.
Yeah, I'm going to try to see it before I go leave them.
I love the Bourne series. All right, here is a moment from Kosher Movies where Herb Cohen is talking with Steve Posen about The Martian.
The other issue that you point out, the film also is about loyalty to people. How much risk do you encounter to save somebody, who made him, who through no fault of his own, winds up in a terrible situation, that really is a truly, at least I see it as an American, ethic of soldiers, and I guess it exists in foreign, I guess in Israel as well.
In Israel, for sure, yeah.
You never leave somebody behind. You always try and get the last man out. Because people have to feel that they at least have people who are going to be concerned with him, if not in what happens in this life, at least what happens in the next life. And God is always in charge, but it's good to know that there are friends and people around who will help you in difficult circumstances.
True.
And Mark knows that, which is amazing.
Herb Cohen talking about The Martian. By the way, what's the message for you as we sit here and you reflect upon it? The message of The Martian.
The message of The Martian is that no matter what kind of adversity you are faced with, never give up. Because we're not in charge of outcomes. We're only in charge of input. So we have to do whatever we can, no matter what happens. And what is interesting about the film is that he's confronted with adversity after adversity after adversity. It doesn't get better. It keeps on getting worse. And with each one, it seems insurmountable. But he, on his own, nobody's around to really help him, decides, I'm going to try and do my best. I'm going to do whatever I can to make it happen. And at the end of the film,
everybody's seen it. Go ahead.
Okay. You see him lecturing kids. He survived. And he's telling an important story.
Yes.
It says in Proverbs, 7 times the righteous fall, but they always get up. That's the point. Don't let adversity beat you down.
Good for you. Does another film come to your mind that you'd like to discuss with us, especially as it applies to how you can draw out Jewish values from the film?
There are many.
What comes to mind?
2 films come to mind. One is I Am Sam, and one is The Diving Bell and the Butterfly. I'll share a couple of thoughts about
Please
each.
do.
Okay. The Diving Bell and the Butterfly deals with, I think it's a true story about the editor of Elle magazine. It's a foreign film. And he has an automobile accident. And he is faced with what they call locked-in syndrome. He can only move his eyelid. What was powerful about this movie is that the whole beginning of it, the first 15 to 20 minutes, is told from his perspective. In other words, I understand that there are disabled people in the world, but I never saw it from the inside of somebody's head who was actually disabled in such a severe way. So for me, it was a brilliant directing job, a powerful film. And eventually, he learns to communicate with a nurse who figures out that she can determine letters by twitching his eyelid. And he's able to write this book, after which he passes away. But 2 important insights emerge from viewing that film. How does a guy with such a severe disability simply endure life? And the film tells us he endures it in 2 ways, through his imagination and his memory. And to me, like a light bulb went off. Because sometimes you see people with severe disabilities, you wonder, how can they survive? But if your mind is intact, you can imagine things. You can go beyond where you are and think about things that never were or that might be. And that is somehow enabling. It enables you to survive. And also memory, when you can go back and think of the wonderful times in your life, that's something. And in this film, it becomes somewhat tragic because in his mind, and you hear the voiceover, he regrets that he did not call back his friend 2-3 days ago. Now he can't call back. He regrets not saying, I love you to the mother of his children. All these little things. So for me, as one friend of mine told me, you should always remember to do the math, count your blessings. It's an obvious lesson, but in the Pirkei Avot, in the Ethics of the Fathers, who's really the rich man? Hasameach bechelka. You have to be happy with what you have. Don't keep on trying to be acquisitive. I mean, this is a common theme in many films. It's not just unique to this film. But I find that film, for me, gave me insights I never thought about before in terms of how the disabled person functions. Not easy.
No, that's lovely, Herb.
Yeah.
By the way, it reminds me of the film about Stephen Hawking's Theory of Everything.
Yeah.
You remember?
Yeah, and I wrote about that film.
And?
My takeaway from that film, because Stephen Hawking is another complicated guy, but at the end of the day, at least in the film, I don't know what happened really, he was married and he had children. And the last frame of the film shows him watching his children. And I thought that was a beautiful thing, that, you know, when all is said and done, what's the legacy that we leave? It's children. You know, how important it is to have a child. You know, from an Orthodox perspective, it's a mitzvah to have children. But beyond that, there's a notion just in life that, you know, what is your legacy? I mean, again, some people can't have children. You know, it's complicated. I'm not going to make any, you know, judgment about that. At the end of the day, all these things are in God's hands. But if you have the opportunity to have children and you pass on it, you know, and I know some people, you know, they wait until it's they're older, and, you know, I feel bad because life moves on, and all of a sudden they will probably wake up and realize, what did I do? So that film reminded me that for all his scientific achievements, what really meant a lot to him was the fact that he had kids.
That is wonderful. I interrupted you. You had a second film you wanted to talk about for a moment.
I Am Sam. I Am Sam. It was Sean Penn's greatest performance, in my view. He plays a mentally handicapped person.
It was an amazing performance.
Yeah, who has a child with a homeless woman. It happens before, almost at the opening frame. We don't really see any relationship there. Then he has the kid. The kid is a normal kid, and as the kid develops, he can't keep up with her. And so some people say she should be placed in a foster home because her real father can't handle her. And then he decides to, at the suggestion of somebody, to contact an attorney, played by Michelle Pfeiffer. And there's a great scene in the film where she says, what should I call you? You know, mentally handicapped, mentally retarded. She goes through a whole litany of about 12 different terms, and he says, just call me Sam. So that it was a reminder that, you know, we can't get lost in labels. Yes. You know, it's also, you know, in Jewish, you know, circles, you know, sometimes we get hung up on, you know, labeling people, and that's very bad. I had a Down syndrome sister, and I used to go with her every Thursday night to what they call Teen Town in Mount Vernon. And I remember one night I went, and there was a kid playing ping pong. He was really playing well, named Bobby Duffy. I figured I'll play Bobby Duffy. I didn't even score a point of him. He killed me. So I see that my own conception, I saw from real life, and then I saw later, we don't know how, let's say, a person with mental disability really functions. We know, you know, they're nice people, they smile, they're nice, but sometimes they can do things that we can't do because everybody's different. It's very, you know, idiosyncratic, and you can't get, again, stuck on labels because you may miss really getting to know somebody. Mm-hmm. That happens in all life too. You know, he's an Orthodox Jew, he's a Reformed Jew.
By the way, there's a list of 3 pages. You really can't see it on screen, but we have 4 pages. These are all movies that Herb has written about. I was surprised 2 films did not appear on the list. And by the way, as I said in the open, no matter what list you give of films or actors or actresses, there's always going to be somebody who says, oh, you forgot one. Oh, you missed one. But still, I want to know if there's a reason Forrest Gump isn't here.
Okay, well, the truth is I have 2 more books on in progress.
Anything I missed is going to come in the next book, huh?
Right.
But tell me about Forrest Gump.
Also, it's just a great film. Tom Hanks is just, it's a one-of-a-kind performance. I'm trying to think what I wrote about it here. Again, I think it's the same idea, although I don't have it in the top of my mind right now. The idea that there's a concept in Avot, in Ethics of the Fathers, every man has his hour. And Forrest Gump proves it, because if you were to take a snapshot of him as a child, he's a loser. He's going nowhere in whatever he's doing. But we don't get the full picture. When you look at the whole arc of his life, you see what a success he is in every way, professionally, personally. He's a father, he's a friend. I mean, he's the kind of guy you want to be your friend.
Yes.
You know, he's just a good person.
Very lovely. Yeah. Another one. On this list, it may be in your next book, Saving Private Ryan.
Also Tom Hanks, another great performance. I added him to the list of the Gary Coopers, along with Kevin Costner and Matthew. But the truth is, Tom Hanks is probably a better actor. So, Saving Private Ryan, what I focused on there was that he's a guy who's a leader. And leaders, in a sense, are not able to really show their emotions. And there's a powerful scene there in which, you know, he has some very bad, dealing with some very bad news. And he's crying, but nobody sees him crying. He does it privately, because for the sake of his soldiers, he doesn't want to project weakness or ambivalence or lack of courage. So he really does the best because he wants to be a good leader. And that nature of leadership, even in the Bible, you know, Moshe Rabbeinu, you know, leads it for a brief moment. But overall, or Joshua, the great leaders of the Jewish people, they understand, and not leaders in any, whether you're Jewish or not, you got to project confidence, and you have to, don't reveal weakness. You can do it to your wife and to friends, you know, but on the battlefield, you can't do that. You can't afford to do that. Mm-hmm. So I think it was a valuable lesson. You know, when it's showtime, you can't fold.
Very nice. So I will ask you, what did you think of Schindler's List?
I thought it was a powerful movie, very good. I am using the word powerful too many times, but I thought it was a good movie. I think it was a great movie. It was a good movie, and I think it had a valuable lesson. Steven Spielberg, who am I to comment on Steven Spielberg? He's a great director, but he's not one of my favorite directors. In films that I watch, I always enjoy them because they're always really very, very good. But sometimes I feel he sort of stops the action to make kind of, you know, to make an obvious moral lesson. When Schindler speaks to his factory workers at the end, I mean, I got it. You know, I didn't have to have that particular scene in the film. So I think his films are superb. And again, when it comes to film, he's a master. I'm just a moviegoer. So, I mean, I respect what he does. He's really great. But I find that from time to time, on occasion, I find the film is, at least from my simple moviegoer perspective, it's a little padded, a little bit.
Was Schindler's List an important movie for the Jewish community?
Yeah.
Because?
Because it was done so well. It really was done well. A lot of people saw that movie. And also for non-Jews, you know, I mean, it was a movie, I mean, the fact that I found a little blip in it doesn't mean anything. The film overall is classic. And that scene where, you know, Oskar Schindler is looking at the raid on the Jewish people, and the girl is shown in red. I mean, that personalizes the whole tragedy. Until it's personalized, it doesn't mean much. You know, we read about the Viet Cong, you know, thousands were killed. It doesn't mean that. But you know one person who's a Vietnamese who experienced that one picture of the girl running in the streets, all of a sudden the general tragedy becomes personalized and you view it differently. So I think that was a masterful directorial stroke. Mm-hmm. All of a sudden it's not just people.
Brilliant.
Brilliant, right.
Talk about two films that come out of the same theme. Mississippi Burning.
Yeah.
And In the Heat of the Night.
Okay, I did not review it in the night, but I saw it. I know Rod Steiger, Sidney Poitier. That was just, for me, it was just an entertaining vehicle about the same theme that was in Defiant Ones. Black and white people finally learning to respect in one another, and they form a friendship with one another, and they're really on the same side. They're not one is not a policeman, one is not trying to undercut the law. It's a lesson we can all look at today.
Mississippi Burning?
Listen, I like that movie because I like Jane Hackman. I like William Dafoe. And that...
But we should remind people, it's about?
The civil rights turmoil in I think in the 60s, or 50s maybe.
1964.
Yeah, where 3 whites went down to the South. And
Schwerner was a Jew, Goodman is a Jew, and Cheney was a black. There were 3 civil rights workers trying to help register blacks to vote.
Right.
And they're murdered by the KKK.
Yeah, that happens in the first few minutes of the film. It is. That film is a stomach churner because it gets you really upset at the beginning when you see the bigotry, you know, and the violence that was perpetrated against people who simply wanted people to have a chance. So, I mean, I remember seeing that film, I was very tense in the whole film. It was not a relaxing film at all to watch. It wasn't entertainment in a conventional sense.
Yes.
But it was good because it showed that at the end of the day, if you work hard and you persevere, it's not, you know, justice can prevail, at least in some way. I mean, it didn't fully prevail, but enough, you got a sense, at least a little bit, that the good guys won.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But one of the films you did like very much was Butch Cassidy
Yeah.
and the Sundance Kid
Yeah.
with Paul Newman, Robert Redford, and Catherine Ross. Why that film?
I saw it in the 60s, and first of all, I was a Paul Newman fan. I mean, I would try to. I liked him as an actor very much, and I like westerns, so right away I was engaged. And for me, it was an eye-opening film because it was the first time I ever saw a film where the bad guys were the guys you rooted for. I mean, I really identified with them, and they seemed like basically nice guys. I never saw a movie like that before. So in a sense, it was, for me, the beginning of the anti-hero movement in film. Bonnie and Clyde. I mean, they're portrayed as very, I mean, they're crazy, but basically, Warren Beatty and Faye Dunaway are attractive people, you know? And I just, throughout the entire 60s, there were other films that I saw. The Night of the Iguana, I think, with Richard Burton, it had a Tennessee Williams play. All the heroes who were very negative people were played by first-run actors, you know, great stars. So you immediately were empathetic when you saw them, even if they portrayed people who were somewhat unsavory.
Yes. To what extent do you pay attention to whether it's a Jewish actor, actress, Jewish director? To what extent, in some way, are you drawn in any way more to films that involve Jews than films that don't? Are you aware of the Jewish personalities who either are in films or who make films?
I'm aware of them, but I don't consider that at all when I look at films, because I feel that's not my goal here. I'm not reviewing on Kosher Movies Jewish films necessarily, though on occasion I might. But
these are not Jewish films, but they're films with Jews.
Yeah, no, I don't. I'm not. It doesn't matter to me.
Doesn't excite you at all.
Nope. No.
Okay. So a film with Natalie Portman means nothing more to you than a film with Meryl Streep.
No, right. If it's a good film, it's a good film.
Very interesting.
I mean, I saw, let's say, you know, Spartacus. I like Kirk Douglas. It was a great movie, but I didn't see it because he was Jewish.
He's barely Jewish.
Right.
He's become much more Jewish now in his later life.
Exactly.
And Michael Douglas has become much more Jewish
also
now than he was when he made some fabulous films.
Right. Well, Tony Curtis, you know, he was one of my, you know, stars when I was growing up. And I guess I was interested in seeing his movies because he was Jewish. Bernie Schwartz, not
really?
Tony Curtis. Yeah, it's his real name, Bernie Schwartz. But you know, he wasn't one of the great. He was a good actor, but you know, not a not.
But he was in a great film.
Some Like It Hot.
Some Like It. But isn't that the quintessential film for him?
And I don't think so.
Which is better for him?
There's another one. Burt Lancaster is the gossip columnist, and he is his lackey. It was a dark movie. But for the first time, Tony Curtis played against type, a very vicious, selfish person. Usually in the movies he played a good guy, but in this film he didn't.
Burt Lancaster did a whole bunch of fabulous films.
Oh, yeah.
And you have here The Rainmaker, where he played with Katharine Hepburn.
Yeah. For me, his great film was Elma Gantry.
Yes.
I used to work in a pharmacy in Mount Vernon called Proctor Pharmacy. It was the pharmacy that was open the latest at night. And I saw the movie, and I passed by the Lowe's Theater on my way home, and I walked home. I saw the end of that movie about 20 times, where Burt Lancaster is making his speech as Elmer Gantry, and he was fabulous. He won an Academy Award for that.
What about the way in which Jews are portrayed in films? Are you ever aware of that? And do you have any insight into both the strengths and the weaknesses of the ways in which Jews are portrayed or Jewish themes are portrayed in major theatrical films?
I generally, I have an interest, but the truth is, most of the time it's very bad. So, you know, it's a negative image, so I feel it, you know, I'm uncomfortable with it because, you know, if a Jew does something bad in public, that's bad enough. You know, you show it to 1 million people in a theater, it's even worse. I'm trying to think. There are some movies I saw where I didn't review them. You know, the Jews were, you know, mafia bosses or people who did very unsavory things. if that's the reality,
Bugsy
that's the
Siegel
reality.
type thing.
Yeah, it's real negative stuff, violent people, just bad people.
Okay. But there's Yentl, and there's Fiddler on the Roof.
Right.
There you go.
Both of them, though, have I would say, complicated messages.
You are absolutely right. What's the, by the way, this will be interesting for me. What's the complicated message in Fiddler on the Roof? Bowie, did you like the movie?
I like the music. I like the music.
I didn't like the movie terribly much.
Yeah,
Okay,
not much.
the musical itself is fabulous, and
Yeah.
Sheldon Harnick is wonderful.
Yeah.
But what's the message? Why is it complicated?
Because at the end of the who's this hero again? I forget his name.
Tevye?
Tevye. Tevye's not an educated guy. He's a sweet guy, a nice guy. At the end of the day, he doesn't know how to rear his kids, and his kids wind up intermarrying. One of his daughters. So
You think it's his fault? You think it's his fault?
No, but he's living a tough life. But
What are you blaming Tevye for?
I'm not blaming.
You did. You blamed Tevye.
No.
He didn't know how to bring up his kids. By the way, my reaction to it was, it is a brilliant, it's Shalom Aleicham's brilliant analysis of Jewish life.
Yeah.
You come into a host culture, and the next thing you know, your children want to become part of that culture. And as time progresses, in the metaphor of Fiddler on the Roof, each child moves further away from tradition.
Right.
And Tevye and Golda have to deal with what's it mean when the first child says, I want to choose who I marry.
Right.
And Tevye says, okay. And then the second child says, I want to marry a secular Jew. And Tevye says, okay. And the third child, Huddle, says, I want to marry a non-Jew. And as the play says, sometimes you bend so far, you break.
Right.
And Tevye can't, in the play or the movie, give his blessing to that shidduch.
Yeah.
Although in the end, he breaks the silence with her,
Right.
at least secondhand. And, I mean, Herb, isn't that the dilemma of modern Jewish life, especially here in America?
Yeah. Yeah. I think parents face that.
All the time.
All the time, yeah. So.
And parents who do a fabulous job with their children. It's,
All we can do is, we're involved in, trying to do the best we can. As I mentioned before, outcomes are not in our hand. I know parents who are sterling people, wonderful parents, and sometimes things happen. It's impossible to
By the
predict.
way, did you do everything your parents wanted you to do?
My parents were very non-judgmental.
What do you mean? You told me before you gave your mother all this kind of grief because you went dati on her.
She tolerated it.
She tolerated it.
She figured I'll get out of it, But after a while,
But you didn't.
But I also developed, instead of just emotions, I began to combine that with an intellectual approach, and we got closer. I realized, what a mitzvah it is to honor my parents. As a kid, I didn't really get it. I didn't understand. I remember my father was ill in Mount Vernon Hospital, and I was an adult, and I had come from Atlanta, and I asked him, Dad, what do you want? I said, can I have an ice cream soda? And all of a sudden, I said, wow, I have an opportunity to do something for my dad. And I ran for the ice cream soda, bring it back, and I didn't have that kind of motivation when I was a kid. I didn't even understand what it was to honor parents. I was polite and nice, but I didn't think about doing things for them.
At what age did you not think of it?
Until I was bar mitzvah. I mean, I was.
But the mitzvah isn't for a 12-year-old. It's not for a 10-year-old.
Even when I was 16 and 17.
Yeah, but the truth is, you and I understand, the older you get and you have older parents,
Yeah.
that's when the mitzvah really applies
Right.
to honor one's father and mother.
Right.
The Jewish education made a mistake by acting like the Ten Commandments for kids.
Yeah.
Ten Commandments aren't for kids. They're for
Right.
you and me.
That's right.
What about television today?
Yeah.
And the reason I ask it, and I have no idea what you're able to watch
Yeah.
in Israel.
Mm-hmm.
My wife and I love movies,
Yeah.
but we find it more and more difficult to find a really good movie,
Yeah.
one that we go to and instantly. I'm not talking about artistic films. And there are many of our viewers I know they would not go to any of the films we're talking about here. But for people who are going, to AMC theaters and seeing major features, there are people who say it's harder and harder to see a really good movie, while at the same time, the television miniseries, especially off-network, where FX and AMC
Netflix,
and HBO and Showtime and Netflix can do much edgier type movies, series, television series, which explore human relationships in a dramatic, entertaining way, is fabulous. And I just am wondering whether that has affected the way you also watch. Do you sometimes say to yourself, as good as films are, I want to watch a great television series?
In Israel, I don't have a TV. And one of my children is a fan of these miniseries. But for me, it requires too much time.
I see.
I can't spend that much time. I'm still stuck on movies. And the truth is, it's hard to find good movies, which is why I'm gratified by the fact that nowadays you can stream movies of any year. So you can, as a library, you'll never end with that library. So if you look at the book, in my upcoming books, I choose movies from all of the times, because I feel people now can get access to all these movies and they can enjoy them. And I just feel, for me, it makes more sense. The truth is, how do I get my movies? I order them from Amazon, and I send them to one of my children in America, my daughter. And when I come to visit America, I pick up
Very nice. Very, very nice. So what about Woody Allen? Are you a Woody Allen fan?
I think he's a very smart guy. Very good. I mean, I disagree. What I would disagree with, it's not relevant. But he's a person who leads a life that I'm uncomfortable with. But that's not what I look at when I look at his movies. Who he's married to, who he's not married to. His worldview on a personal level is something that I don't connect with. But his movies are brilliant overall. Crimes and Misdemeanors,
Fabulous film.
I think it's the greatest film. It just shows you the complexity of trying to make decisions when you're on the edge of a moral precipice, and how sometimes you can do the wrong thing and get away with it. In other words,
he also is really exploring what it means to believe in God or not to believe in God.
Yeah.
In a very interesting way.
Yeah.
There may be other filmmakers, and by the way, our director, Sloan Copeland, is a filmmaker, and he does fabulous work, and he may know some films that I'm not thinking of. Yeah. But I don't know of any film more so than his films, Woody Allen's films, especially Crimes and Misdemeanors, where the whole subtext is there a God?
Right.
And does God see? And why does a person do whatever a person does? Yeah. Is it to please God, or is there, in some way an overarching ethic which both the, quote, religious and the secular individual can embrace?
For me, the takeaway of that film is that don't always expect the good guys to win and the bad guys to lose in this world. I see things from the aspect of eternity. If the guy in Crimes and Misdemeanors gets away with murder, he may get away with murder in this world. But if I look at life as this world and the next, then ultimately there's a divine accountability. I can't figure it out because I only have finite vision. But from the infinite perspective of God, it's all going to work out.
The Jewish tradition says there's no tzaddik gamor and there's no rasha gamor.
Right.
There's no one who's completely righteous or completely wicked. I think to myself, people often don't remember the good they do. People do, even people who do ugly things, also do extraordinarily lovely things.
Yes.
And if you're right, and there is in some way eternal accountability or divine accountability, I believe that there is a God who takes into account much of what we don't even notice about ourselves.
Oh, sure.
And there's a lot of good in everybody. Everybody. There's a lot of good in you. Mazal tov to what you're doing. Herb, it's a joy meeting you. I wish you kol tov v'atzlacha, all the work you do. I hope that when you're here in the United States from time to time, you'll sit at this desk. We'll talk about other movies you enjoy and the lessons we can learn from them. But it's been an absolute joy meeting you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, and may God grant us both good health to continue
Absolutely.
our good work.
Together, my friend,
Right.
together. Rabbi Herbert Cohen, author of Kosher Movies, published by Urim Publications. A film critic discovers life lessons at the cinema. It's a fun read, and again, if you like movies, you want this book in your library. As always, I invite you to be in touch with me with your own thoughts and comments. So, which directors do you like? Which actors do you like? Which films are your favorites? If you're interested, let me know, and I'll do something with it here on L'chaim. Please, email me, write me, post on our Facebook wall, or tweet me. I look forward to hearing from you. Until the next time, I'm Mark Golub. L'chaim, my friends, to life.
L'chaim is a presentation of Jewish education in media.
We would be pleased to send a complimentary DVD of this program to anyone who wishes to support JBS, the Jewish Broadcasting Service, with a tax-deductible gift of $36, double chai or more, to the nonprofit organization Jewish Education in Media. Simply visit the JBS homepage and click on the Donate button to make a donation by PayPal or your credit card. And please indicate the program for which you would like a DVD. Or you can send your tax-deductible check made out to Jem, Post Office Box 180, Riverdale Station, Bronx, New York 10471. And again, please remember to indicate which program you would like to receive with our compliments. And we thank you for your kind support.